People spend so much time wondering why the narcissist didn't choose the one who loved them the hardest, the one who prayed for them, stayed by their side, defended them, and tried desperately to reach the goodness hidden under all that armor. But here's a truth most people don't want to accept. Narcissists don't end up with the strongest person or the kindest person or the one who treated their heart like something sacred. They end up with the one who asks the least from their soul. A narcissist isn't searching for partnership, they are looking for fuel, someone to keep their ego burning, someone who applauds even after the performance is over, someone who never asks them to grow, to change, to reflect, or to take responsibility for the chaos they leave behind. That's why they can't stay with someone who sees them clearly. They can't stay with the one who has the courage to say, "This is hurting me." They can't stay with the one who calls out the lies, questions the contradictions, or notices the masks slipping. Clarity is their enemy, truth is their mirror, and they spend their whole life running from it. So, who do they end up with? They end up with someone who never questions their version of reality. Someone so pliable that the narcissist never has to confront the rigidity in their own soul. Someone who trades their own identity just to keep things calm. Someone who mistakes being chosen for being valued, loyalty for losing themselves quietly. They end up with someone who confuses the narcissist's storms for passion and their silence for depth. Someone who hasn't learned yet that love without reciprocity isn't love, it's servitude. They end up with the person who holds the mirror low enough so the narcissist never has to face themselves. And here's the painful part. They don't end up with the one who deserves their love. They end up with the one willing to survive their dysfunction. Because a narcissist doesn't pick the best option. They pick the easiest, the choice that lets them remain exactly who they are without trying to become better, the choice that won't challenge their selfishness or disrupt their illusions, the choice that keeps them comfortable even if it keeps them hollow. But here's the twist, the real twist. The one who loved them deeply, the one who fought for them, the one who tried to understand the chaos inside them, that person isn't losing. They're escaping. They're being freed from a battlefield they were never meant to fight. Because anyone who walks away from a narcissist isn't walking away from love. They're walking back to themselves. And the narcissist? They end up exactly where their choices lead, standing next to someone who doesn't challenge their darkness because they are too afraid to shine their own light. That's not a victory. That's a prison disguised as a partnership. One day, when the noise fades and the applause ends, they'll realize something the one who got away already knew. Being chosen by a narcissist was never the blessing. Being released from one was. When people talk about narcissists and relationships, they often misunderstand the foundation of how a narcissist picks the person they attach to. Most people believe relationships are built on connection, compatibility, shared values, or emotional resonance. But with a narcissist, it's completely different. Their relationships aren't built on love, but on need, not on care, but on emotional extraction. When we say a narcissist doesn't choose a partner, but a source of supply, we're pointing to the most basic pattern in their relationships. Narcissists live with a constant hunger, an emptiness that demands admiration, validation, attention, and emotional energy from others because they can't generate it themselves. They don't have stable self-esteem. They have inflated self-importance layered over fragile insecurity, and that insecurity must be fed, like a fire that dies as soon as the fuel is gone. This is why their choice of partner has nothing to do with qualities important in a healthy relationship. They don't look for kindness because they value compassion. They don't look for loyalty because they appreciate commitment. They don't look for emotional depth because they crave intimacy. They look for one thing, someone who will keep the spotlight on them the longest. They scan for who will tolerate the most emotional strain, absorb the most inconsistency, soothe their ego after every conflict, praise them even when they're wrong, put their needs above their own, and stay even when things feel unbalanced. The most giving, forgiving, empathetic person often becomes the prime target. To understand this, you have to see how a narcissist perceives others. They don't see people as individuals with inner lives. They see them as extensions of themselves, tools, resources, accessories. They don't form bonds. They form attachments. They don't fall in love. They form dependencies. They don't choose partners. They choose emotional service providers. That's why they often seem charming, attentive, idealizing. At first, they study the other person, noting their strengths, vulnerabilities, traumas, and insecurities. They calculate what they can take. When someone shows a strong need for love or proves nurturing, patient, self-sacrificing, the narcissist sees opportunity. That person becomes a vessel for supply. What makes this even more painful is that the narcissist often chooses the partner most willing to give without expecting emotional return. Not because they value that person, but because they exploit it. They choose the one who makes them feel important without demanding vulnerability. They choose the one who stabilizes their chaos but never asks them to confront it. They choose the one who accepts the bare minimum and celebrates breadcrumbs. Because to a narcissist, the ideal partner isn't someone who loves them deeply. It's someone who loves them unconditionally, without requiring change, responsibility, or growth. And this is why the people who love them most often feel discarded, replaced, confused. They think they weren't enough when in reality, they were too much, too aware, too intuitive, too emotionally intelligent. They saw too clearly and felt too deeply. And a narcissist cannot handle that level of truth. So instead, they gravitate towards supply, not soul. Validation over genuine connection, control over intimacy, ego feeding over heart feeding. When you understand a narcissist emotionally, it becomes clear why they end up with someone who demands nothing from their soul. A narcissist cannot handle emotional depth, accountability, or true intimacy. Those require vulnerability, reflection, responsibility, and mutual giving. These qualities threaten them because they expose the emptiness they work so hard to hide. Instead of choosing someone who challenges them or asks for reciprocity, they choose someone who asks for the bare minimum, someone who accepts surface level affection instead of real connection, someone who doesn't question contradictions, doesn't call out disrespect, doesn't ask the narcissist to face the damage they cause. Imagine what it feels like for a narcissist when someone gets too close emotionally. Closeness means exposure. Exposure shows their patterns, lies, manipulations, contradictions, and when someone sees them clearly, they lose control. Control is their oxygen. They maintain it through distance, secrecy, and shifting blame. A partner demanding presence disrupts all of that. Someone who wants conversation after conflict, honesty, consistency, a real bond becomes a threat. So instead of meeting those expectations, they retreat towards someone who never demands such things. The person they end up with often confuses emotional crumbs for care. Someone used to shrinking themselves to maintain peace. Someone who believes love means silently tolerating disappointment. They don't ask the narcissist to show up fully because they themselves never fully show up. They accept whatever the narcissist gives, even if inconsistent or shallow, believing that asking for more will push them away. For the narcissist, this situation is perfect. They can stay emotionally distant, unpredictable, and self-centered without being questioned or confronted. Another reason a narcissist chooses someone who demands nothing is because it protects their inflated self-image. A partner who seeks emotional depth acts like a mirror. That mirror reflects the narcissist's weaknesses, immaturity, defensiveness, and emotional laziness. They would rather avoid facing that reflection entirely. It is easier to be with someone who never asks them to grow or change. The narcissist can remain stagnant while still receiving admiration, attention, and loyalty. They don't have to face discomfort or risk vulnerability. There is also a darker aspect to this pattern. Narcissists often fear being abandoned, but they fear accountability even more. Someone who seeks a soul-level connection also requires honesty, consistency, and presence. The narcissist knows deep inside that they cannot meet those standards. Being with a partner who asks for nothing means they never have to fear emotional exposure. That partner becomes a safe container for dysfunction, absorbing the narcissist's mood swings, excuses, and emotional neglect without resistance. They become the emotional cushion the narcissist leans on when reassurance is needed, but they never return it. This can feel devastating for the strong, loving, emotionally aware person who is discarded or replaced. They often think they failed because they weren't enough. In truth, they were too much, too honest, too intuitive, too self-aware, too emotionally present. A narcissist cannot handle someone who sees past their charm, so they choose the path of least resistance. They choose the partner who never challenges them, never demands growth, never seeks depth, and never asks the narcissist to reveal their true self. They prefer emotional ease over emotional evolution, even if it means never experiencing real love. When we say a narcissist avoids the person who sees them clearly, we are pointing to a truth at the core of their personality. Narcissists live behind a carefully constructed mask, a version of themselves they show the world to hide insecurity and fragility. They rely on this mask to survive emotionally, because without it, they would have to face the parts of themselves they spend their life avoiding. When someone comes along who can see through that mask, someone who notices contradictions, emotional inconsistencies, manipulation, or the pain hidden behind arrogance, the narcissist will start distancing themselves immediately. Clarity feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. The person who sees them clearly is usually intuitive, emotionally intelligent, or experienced in reading people. They ask deeper questions, notice when things don't add up, sense changes in tone or energy, and detect gaps in the story. They may reflect their observations gently, not to attack, but to understand. Yet to the narcissist, this awareness is threatening. Someone who reads between the lines interrupts their control, and control is the foundation of a narcissist's emotional world. They need to dictate the story, the pace, the emotional tone, and when to give affection or distance, when anger is justified or when blame is assigned. Being seen clearly interrupts that control and feels like suffocation. The fear of exposure is rooted in shame. Narcissists carry a deep sense of inadequacy they cannot acknowledge. They protect themselves by projecting confidence, superiority, or detachment. When someone sees past that projection, noticing the insecurity behind arrogance or fear behind rage, the narcissist experiences something intolerable: vulnerability. Vulnerability is foreign to them because it requires honesty, humility, openness, admitting faults, apologizing, listening, processing emotions, and being accountable. Instead of embracing vulnerability, they run from it, often with hostility or indifference. This is why narcissists devalue or discard those who see the truth. They may create conflict, withdraw, shift blame, or label the perceptive partner as too emotional, demanding, or overthinking. It is their defense mechanism. They must invalidate the partner's perception because if the perception is correct, their whole identity feels threatened. Narcissists would rather lose the relationship than the illusion they have built about themselves. This is painful for those who see clearly because they often act from love, care, curiosity, or a genuine desire to understand. They may believe that by reaching the real person beneath the mask, they can help the narcissist heal or reconnect. But narcissists don't see this as love. They see it as intrusion. Someone with deep understanding is perceived as a threat to their emotional survival, so they push them away, even if that person cared the most. It is even more tragic because narcissists are often drawn to the perceptive person initially. They enjoy the attention, depth, and connection. But the moment the relationship requires authenticity, when the partner becomes a mirror rather than an admirer, the narcissist retreats. They prefer someone who sees only the surface, who never questions them, and who keeps their illusions intact. They avoid the one who sees clearly because that person threatens the world they built to avoid facing themselves. When we say a narcissist gravitates towards someone who mirrors their story rather than reality, we reveal how much they depend on illusion. Narcissists do not live in reality like others. They live in a self-constructed world where they are always right, always misunderstood when convenient, always the victim when it suits them, and always the hero when they need admiration. Their emotional survival relies on this version of truth. They seek partners who support, reinforce, or reflect that narrative, not someone who challenges it or brings them back to reality. They want a participant in the mythology they create about themselves. Their narrative might include beliefs that they are exceptional, morally superior, unfairly judged, or constantly betrayed. They might see themselves as more emotionally mature, self-aware, or giving than they truly are. Instead of choosing someone who encourages growth or reflection, they choose someone who lets their self-deceptions remain unchallenged. Someone who agrees with their version of events, who nods when they blame others, and who never questions contradictions, timelines, or extremes. Someone who accepts their story exactly as told. This is why narcissists avoid emotionally intelligent partners who recognize patterns or inconsistencies. A perceptive partner might say, "That doesn't add up," or "I think you're avoiding something deeper." To a narcissist, these words are threats because facing them means confronting the truth. Truth is not just uncomfortable, it destabilizes them. It forces them to face the fragility beneath their inflated self-image and the fact that their identity is built on distortion and exaggeration. So they choose someone who accepts illusion without question. The partner they pick often has traits that make them vulnerable to this dynamic. They may be compliant, people-pleasing, overly trusting, or eager to see the best in others. They might crave peace so much that they agree to avoid conflict. They might see loyalty as unconditional acceptance, even at the expense of their own clarity. This makes them the perfect mirror for the narcissist's story because they don't push back. They allow the narcissist to rewrite events, reinterpret motives, and shift blame freely. When the narcissist says they were betrayed, this partner believes them. When they say an ex was crazy, this partner repeats it without question. When a narcissist claims they are always the one making sacrifices, their partner often nods along and reassures them. This validation makes the narcissist feel admired, understood, and safe in their illusion. It creates a dynamic where the partner's own sense of self starts blending into the narcissist's story. They begin taking on the narcissist's opinions, repeating their viewpoints, and even defending their actions. Slowly, they become less of a separate individual and more like an extension of the narcissist's identity. The real tragedy is that the person who can see clearly, the one who recognizes the narcissist's insecurities, contradictions, and emotional walls, is often pushed away. Not because they are wrong about the narcissist, but because they are too accurate. Narcissists cannot handle mirrors that reflect reality. They prefer mirrors that show them as perfect, powerful, and always justified. This is why they tend to end up with someone who sustains their illusion rather than someone who exposes the truth. They choose the partner who reflects their narrative because that narrative shields them from the painful realities they refuse to confront. When you say that a narcissist settles for the person who keeps the spotlight on them, even if it costs that partner their sense of self, you are describing the core of their relationship patterns. Narcissists require constant attention, admiration, and emotional energy. This is not a luxury for them, it is a psychological necessity. Their self-esteem is unstable, shaky, and fragile. They depend on others to fill the gaps and make them feel complete. The partner who constantly shines the light on the narcissist becomes a lifeline, someone who feeds their ego without ever turning the focus back onto themselves. This partner becomes like an invisible stagehand, always in the background, while the narcissist takes center stage, performing as the misunderstood hero, the superior partner, or the endlessly wronged victim. A narcissist is drawn to a partner who prioritizes their emotional needs above everything else, even if it requires giving up their own happiness, ambitions, or self-worth. This partner may start out confident, independent, and full of personality, but over time, they are reshaped by the narcissist's endless demands for reassurance and attention. The narcissist is subtle at first, praising attentiveness, withdrawing when the partner expresses their own needs, and punishing through criticism or silent treatment when the partner tries to stand out. The message becomes obvious. Your light overshadows mine. Your voice makes mine quieter. Your needs distract from me. So shrink, dim yourself, make yourself smaller, and allow me to remain comfortable. The partner internalizes this because narcissists are experts at making self-sacrifice feel like loyalty. The partner starts equating love with silence, compliance, and giving up parts of themselves to keep the narcissist steady. Eventually, they lose the ability to distinguish where they end and the narcissist begins. Narcissists do not choose partners because of who they truly are. They choose those who are willing to fade into the background, someone whose presence keeps the narcissist's ego intact. They are terrified of being overshadowed and cannot share emotional space. If a partner has talents, goals, or ambitions, a narcissist may admire them initially. But if these qualities gain attention or confidence, the narcissist feels threatened. They prefer someone who will never challenge their emotional authority, someone who will cheer for them but not expect applause in return, someone who places the narcissist's dreams first while quietly shelving their own, someone who can be molded into a supportive secondary role. Most narcissists seek this dynamic not out of cruelty but out of fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of losing control, fear of exposure. A partner with an identity of their own is a threat because individuality brings independence, and independence brings the possibility of leaving. So the narcissist chooses someone who doesn't ask for equality, someone whose love language is giving even when it drains them. They choose someone who mirrors their greatness without reflecting their flaws, someone who slowly disappears so the narcissist can feel bigger. Over time, the partner's entire identity revolves around prioritizing the narcissist. They forget who they were before the relationship because every part of themselves has been reshaped to feed the narcissist emotionally. The cruel irony is that narcissists do not end up with the person they admire or respect. They end up with the one they can control, the one they can overshadow, the one willing to shrink. If that partner ever regains their voice, steps into their own light, or reclaims their identity, the narcissist's illusion collapses. That is why they cling to the partner who keeps the spotlight on them, even if it extinguishes the partner's own light. When you say that a narcissist often ends up with someone who survives their dysfunction rather than someone who deserves their love, you are stating the hard truth about how these relationships form and persist. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, emotional give and take, shared growth, and genuine connection. Narcissistic relationships are built on endurance, not harmony. They endure because one partner tolerates what the other exploits. They continue not because love is deep, but because dysfunction becomes normal. Narcissists do not pick their partner based on compatibility, morality, or emotional integrity. They pick the one willing to absorb the chaos, endure the instability, and accept emotional neglect without leaving. Narcissists view love differently from healthy people. To them, love is transactional, a tool, a resource. They want someone to give endlessly without expecting accountability in return. Someone who accepts blame even when the narcissist is wrong. Someone who stays even during emotional withdrawal. Someone who forgives despite repeated hurtful behavior. The partner who stays through this becomes the one the narcissist ultimately keeps, not out of love, but because they tolerate the dysfunction. They survive unpredictability, manipulation, emotional distance, gaslighting, cycles of idealization, and neglect. They do not demand emotional depth or personal growth, which makes them easier to control. The person who truly deserved love, the one offering sincerity, authenticity, emotional connection, and care, often leaves because they cannot survive the narcissist's dysfunction without losing themselves. They brought depth, honesty, and reflection. But reflection threatens the narcissist's fragile world. Someone deserving love would hold a mirror that requires growth, vulnerability, and accountability. Narcissists cannot handle that. They retreat to those who require nothing of them, who don't challenge their illusion of superiority or vulnerability. The partner who stays often believes endurance is love. They think loyalty means staying, patience will heal, and self-sacrifice is noble. They hope the narcissist will eventually see their worth, but narcissists respond with entitlement, not gratitude. The more a partner tolerates, the more the narcissist expects. The more they stay through mistreatment, the less respect they receive. The relationship becomes unbalanced. The narcissist gives the minimum. The partner gives the maximum, always hoping for equality that never comes. The partner who deserved love, the one with clarity, strength, emotional intelligence, and boundaries, would leave rather than abandon themselves. And that is why the narcissist ends up with the one who can endure, not the one who deserves love. Not because that person is better, but because they are willing to be less seen, less valued, less whole. The narcissist does not end up with someone who meets them with truth and depth. They end up with someone who adapts, absorbs wounds, and survives storms, not because they are the ideal choice, but because they are the easiest to manage, control, and overshadow.